Welcome to Good Game, your no BS insights for crypto founders.
Proof of physical work is the one where if you ever use the mobile app or whatever, it feels like Web2 application. And the crypto stuff is, for the most part, abstracted away. And the founder of Helium also talked about using ads to acquire users. Like, that's how they perceive their users, is that they're not crypto natives, they're the mainstream, the normies. And so that's why this whole thing where the proof of physical work projects are moving to Solana is such a big deal for Solana, because Solana is being perceived by builders as being the chain for attracting the mainstream users.
So could we say that, Solana could become the consumer chain?
Yes.
Yeah, same.
That's their trend we're seeing. And Ethereum is the crypto native chain.
That's an interesting narrative. That's a very interesting narrative, right? One's more like crypto native, like you have DeFi and all the other good stuff that's happening there. That's more like attracting the pro crypto users. And then you have Solana that's more for mainstream adoption. Looking for your next startup idea in crypto? Check out our request for startups list and get inspired at alliance.xyz/ideas. Welcome to Good Game. We're starting with a new format. And this format is going to be a bit different than our original format, which is we'll be diving into certain topics from a research perspective. And we will guide our audience to think about these topics in a way that would enable them to either double down and build in a space, two is find more informative information so that they can learn more about a certain topic. But we want our audience to have very strong takeaways from all of our topics, and we'll guide our audience to think a bit more about it. But before we get started, I would like to introduce some of our speakers that will be speaking about the topics moving forward. Will, if you want to do a quick intro.
Hey, everybody. My name is Will Robinson. Been in Alliance for 2 years. Before that, I was a forensic crypto auditor, basically checking in on people's balance sheets and making sure they had the crypto they said they did. I did that for 3.5 years, but before that, I did a PhD in video game design. So I'm hoping that the majority of my insights will be about video games and not compliance.
And Mohamed Fouda, I know you've been on a regular guest on our regular format, but maybe a quick introduction for our audience.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Mohamed Fouda, background electrical engineering, worked a lot in the digital design space and then quantum mechanics and quantum physics stuff. Got the crypto back in 2016 and went into technical diligence, investment side, founded Vault Capital, and now head of research at Alliance, where we are working with the best founders in the space.
Great. I know we've went back and forth about what topics.
We don't need to introduce me.
Well, I mean, you and I are regular hosts, right?
Okay, fine.
If you want to get an introduction, I'll give you an introduction. Go ahead. Go.
Nah, let's not introduce me.
I was going to introduce myself. So
These are people who need no introduction. Their reputations precede them.
Let's dive straight into the research topic, which is way more interesting than my background.
That's right. And mine too. But there are many areas. Everyone's talking about MEV. They're talking about the modular thesis. But over the course of the past 12 months, a thesis that has been beaten down over and over and over again has been Solana. While the layer 2 narrative has taken off and, Cosmos and app chains and et cetera, I feel as if Solana has been less talked about. And in fact, I remember a period where I would tell investors why they should be investing in certain startups that are building within the Solana ecosystem. They would push back and say, I'm never investing in the Solana ecosystem again. I actually sent out a tweet a couple months ago in January. I just found it, where I was frustrated by the amount of no's we were getting from our founders that were graduating from our program that were building the Solana ecosystem. So I think our podcast today, we should dive deep into the Solana ecosystem. What are the new narratives that are popping up, and why maybe layer 2s are bearish? Why we're bearish on layer 2s?
There was a tweet by Anatoly yesterday that said investors who try to convince their founders to go multi-chain or to move away from Solana is the greatest filter for bad VCs. Something to that effect. And I just can't agree more. I just lost count of how many investors try to convince our founders to ditch Solana and go build on a Ethereum layer 2.
I think every project has its own unique needs. Why do you think and a VC would advise their project if they feel that they need another L2? I don't think that's necessarily is a bad advice.
It depends. I think if you're building a project and you barely started, you have nothing to show, I think it's okay to consider and Ethereum layer 2 versus Solana in the heat of the moment, like last November when FTX collapsed, I thought it was okay if you just got started. But if you have been building in Solana for many months to a couple of years, at that point, if someone tells you to go to Ethereum, it's probably the worst advice anyone can give you. Because number one, Solana is not bad. Obviously, I've seen 3 to 4 cycles of crypto bear markets, and I can tell when a chain becomes a ghost chain when I see it. And in November last year, when FTX collapsed, Solana was not going to become a ghost chain. There's no chance because the developers were still there. They still had a critical mass of builders. So anyone who told you to move away from Solana, once you've been building Solana for many months, is probably the worst advice anyone can give you.
Okay, anyway. I agree with that. I agree with that view. But the nuance is important here.
I mean, VCs are, investors generally are also market driven, right? So whatever answers you get is going to be based on the market today, not really the future. And so I'd say if you are a founder getting advice from investors, try to get multiple streams of advice so that you could validate your thesis, because I've seen some founders make bad moves after this past crash. But diving deep into Solana, there are many what I call catalysts for the Solana ecosystem. Fouda, I know you have a few that are written down. Maybe talk about a few that you're excited about.
Yeah, there is actually a few catalysts in Solana, I don't think it's a coincidence that many of them are coming around the same time. I think the most famous of them is the Solana Phone. It was announced last year. It actually started appearing in the market a few weeks ago, and I think Imran, you ordered one. Did you ever receive it?
Yeah, I think it's in process, so I should be receiving it soon.
I'm really surprised by how fast they shipped this. I mean, it's a hardware project. I would have thought it would have taken like 3 more years, but pretty impressive. I don't know how good the phone is, but I'm impressed with the speed of execution.
We will speak about that because Solana didn't fabricate the phone. They went to another company to fabricate the phone. So this is one area. The other area which I personally excited about is called state compression, which is a technical improvement on the Solana protocol itself that led to a new trend in the Solana ecosystem called compressed NFTs. We can dive deeper into compressed NFTs and why they are important and how they are enabling new use cases.
So is the consequence of that lower fees, and what is
lower fees? Yeah, mainly lower fees, but also ability to scale the network better. And we'll get to the details of why compressed NFTs actually help in scaling, not just fees. And the other areas are we are seeing also a trend for client diversity. So we are seeing Jump introduced their Fire Dancing client. And I think we'll have also a lot of topics to discuss on gaming. I will let him lead the discussion on gaming. The last area that is actually very exciting on Solana is a deepen network or proof physical work networks. We are seeing a couple projects actually deciding to ditch their own L1s in favor of building on top of Solana. And this is a kind of unique thing. We didn't see this happening before. It's actually always working on the other direction. Someone building on an L1 and say, no, we are done. We are going to build our own L1. The opposite direction is new, and there is reasons. And I think you chatted before with the founder of Helium. So you can add more color here. So this is a few more items. What are you seeing on the gaming side?
Before I answer that, though, I feel like in a bear market, when fees are low, there's a come back to the mother chain approach. And then during bull, when fees are high, there's a scatter to build your own chain approach. And especially when they're climbing, you're like, we're not going to have a protocol that'll function here soon. So that might be part of the reason.
The bear market mother chain is really Ethereum layer 1.
Yeah.
Right
everything
now else is.
Well, Solana's acting like a mother to many, though, right? Like an adoptive mom picking up Helium and who else now?
Helium, a Hive Mapper. Oh, sorry, not Hive Mapper. Render.
Hive Mapper as well.
Hive Mapper was building on Solana natively already, so I don't think they moved from.
No, that's right.
So I guess on that topic, then games on Solana have this nice advantage. So if anybody was around in 2018 when CryptoKitties basically crashed Ethereum. It didn't literally crash. You just couldn't get a transaction through because the gas prices were so painful. That was the problem of composability. Sharing your application on the same server as everyone else's application is brutal. Solana, offering this amazingly increased throughput, alleviates that problem, but we still end up in this position where if you do find product market fit with your game, you might once again crash the chain and be forced to build some separate layers. So generally games want to build their own chains, except those in the Solana ecosystem who are basically hoping that the 5,000 TPS or whatever it is right now is going to keep them afloat. Going through like the top games right now, you have Aurory, which I played this morning, actually. It's quite nice. The gameplay is very reasonable.
What kind of game is it?
So it's like a tactics game. You have like little people. You move them around like a grid. You make them do their little attacks. They build up power and can launch bigger attacks. You got this tutorial plus adventure mode. I recommend it, actually, because one, it actually worked. Like the vast majority of crypto games, like if you go on like Elixir, which has a lot of Solana games, you'll find like there's nothing there. Like you try to play the game and you hit a brick wall at a certain point. So I was impressed with that.
What's put on chain in the case of Aurory?
So with Aurory, it's just the NFTs. It's like a marketplace style Web 2.5 game is what I call them for like audiences at home. When only the assets are on chain, I think of it as Web 2.5, like a Coinbase style project. When the entire logic is on chain, we're now closer to a Uniswap style project, right? Where it's truly Web3 native. The cool thing about Aurory, though, and going through a lot of the gameplay, is that it could one day go fully on chain because of its nature as a turn-based combat game. Like it's the optimal kind of game for that. But I haven't talked to the developers, and I don't know if that's on their roadmap. Also thinking about Star Atlas, so one of the games that raised the most money to build something really AAA in crypto.
How is that? Because there was just so much hype around Star Atlas.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm curious on what ended up happening with Star Atlas.
Yeah, I can tell you the current status. So like if you bought a ship, you can visualize it in your client on your desktop. So you can sort of see, but there's no gameplay around that yet. If you want to play their current demo of what a fully on-chain game could be, they have a game where you can move a spaceship on a grid and scan for resources. As cool as a tech demo as it is, it's an unplayably boring game. It's like years behind how much fun we've been able to produce in other places for fully on-chain games, but that's a demo, right? So you can't judge it beyond that.
But it is trying to be fully on-chain, is what you're saying.
So this demo it's called Sage, which is the Star Atlas Golden Era. My understanding of Star Atlas from the beginning was that it's going to be a Web 2.5 game. So the fact that they've like bifurcated the side project that makes it fully on-chain is quite exciting to me. I don't know what that means for the larger ecosystem. There's also another Star Atlas game you can play, which is similar to like Layer 3 if you've tried like a quest-based website before, or like Rabbit Hole for people who've tried that. It's weirdly on Polygon, which I found kind of shocking, right? Like if so much of the game in the marketplace is, I think it's just because they're using Zeely as a reseller. So like they didn't build it fully themselves, and so they're leveraging their infra. But that was kind of weird. Like the first thing I had to do was tell Polygon what my Solana address was. So yeah, those are pretty cool things that are happening on the games front. Obviously, there's like Genopets and Steppen, which are already pretty successful move to earn projects. I can also talk about infra, but we can also get back to that. It's a lot of games talk already.
I guess the question is like, how do we think about games on Solana? Like generally, I've seen some startups raise capital. I didn't really see a lot of users coming into those games. So let's compare that relative to what's happening on Ethereum.
Sure. One of the problems with blockchain is it provides basically nothing to game design. Like it's not a technology that moves the bar. Like with VR or AR or motion sensors, you can build new games. But like solving consensus around like database changes has very little like fun. What you can get instead are things like markets and money to move into the game in a more reliable way. Although most regulators hate that, and I'm worried that there's going to be a lot of clampdown on the games that try to really leverage the regulatory arbitrage that blockchains bring with them. I suspect that the fully on-chain games that build protocols that are uncensorable and permissionless might have a better shot at resisting these regulators. But all the big game projects that came in were very kind of, I mean, forgive me, boomer ideas, right? They were classic Web 2 developers moving into the crypto space, leveraging this buzzword to see if they could get something exciting going. Ubisoft tried and died.
I'm really done with those.
Yeah.
I've seen way too many of those. You and I together.
So, yeah.
We've got a lot.
But Solana, so Imran and I did a back of the napkin calculation a few episodes ago on what kind of a game can Solana really support. And Will, you did an independent back of napkin calculation this morning. Imran and I's conclusion was that if your game is in the top 10 game in the world, something similar to PUBG or Fortnite or whatever, with 100 million to 1 billion users, active users, and they make conservatively speaking 10 to 100 clicks or state changes. And I won't do the calculation again, but the conclusion was even Solana wasn't able to handle a game like that. Basically, a game that's in the top 10 and then fully on chain with all the state changes is not possible. What was your conclusion?
So generally a top 10 game needs about 200,000 concurrent players. So concurrent is not the same as daily active. It means players playing it exactly right now, right? Like player liquidity, we can think of it.
Why is that important?
Well, because they're all going to be competing for the next block space, right? Because they want to get their actions in. So we want to see, okay, let's say...
It's time zones.
Yeah.
There's probably 3 surges of concurrent players per day.
Yeah, the pros are going to move to the middle of the Pacific just to make sure they get better block space. But so
South Korea can take up the entire chain, basically.
Yeah.
So okay, let's say that Solana can do 10,000 TPS at some point, right? Let's keep the orders of magnitude reasonable, right? And you want to have 200,000 concurrent players, right? Well, then you think about, they can't all make one move per second, right? There's a queue, right? You just take 200,000, you divide by 10,000. Mohammed, you're a scientist. What's the number you end up getting? 20.
Calculator, come on.
So that means you get one move every 20 seconds, right? Okay. So when we're thinking one move every 20 seconds, we're not playing Counter-Strike here, folks. Counter-Strike is 12 moves every millisecond.
Is that why we have so many card games on crypto?
Yeah, that's why we have Hearthstone up the wazoo. Everybody wants to make a Hearthstone.
But those are the least interesting games to begin with. So
Hearthstone makes a lot of money. That's pretty interesting.
They do. But if you're talking about mass adoption, you want hundreds of millions of people using the game.
Hearthstone has that.
Really? Magic the Gathering.
Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, they're huge. Oh my God, so successful.
But that's a cult status game, right? You got to build a cult in order for you to get that type of I feel like that's just once in a decade or so type of game, right?
Yeah, maybe a tower defense could be reasonable.
Okay.
Things like Civilization, if you've played that,
yes.
It's a strategy game, right? Which is for nerds. For now, anyway. I think you have to take that Chris Dixon quote to heart, which is what the nerds are going to do on weekends, everyone will do in 10 years on weekdays. Okay. And so I think this is the sort of status we're at. So yeah, and that would kill Solana too, right? That's one game and we wipe out all the rest of Solana. So that can't work, right? Because a move every 20 seconds is bare minimum.
Yeah.
So the games will need their own chain. That's basically the...
Maybe
even their own chain won't cut it.
They could find PMF, right? Their own chain won't cut it. Really, you're going to need rollups as a service. You're going to have to spin up 50 different chains, all with pretty low security standards, and build
horizontal
across those.
Scaling, et cetera, et cetera.
No one wants horizontal scaling, but that's what we're going to need.
Okay, so let's get back to Solana. So Solana, we spent 20 minutes to conclude that Solana is probably not good enough for a top 10 game of all time, but
a fine place for it to find PMF, right? That would be a great place for it to discover it because it's much better than other limitations of other chains.
Also, Solana's VM, right? There's 2 rollups that are building around the Solana ecosystem called Eclipse and Nitro. If you heard of those companies, that could be interesting.
Can they really do better than the Solana base chain?
I'm unsure about that. Have you looked into it, Fouda?
Yeah, they will inherit the same features of the Solana L1, right, but they will not use the consensus of Solana. So they will have parallel transactions. They will have the same account model as in Solana.
Yeah.
So we can essentially achieve something like 2,000 TPS or something. But instead of you saying, okay, now you have to settle on the Solana blockchain, you can settle as an L2 and put your proofs on the Ethereum L1 or even Celestia or something else. So yeah, it's a viable way to scale other L2s.
Are you bullish or bearish on Solana VMs and other layer 2s that's building within the Solana ecosystem?
Actually, to be fair to Solana's approach actually proved viable. they brought a very distinctive L1, nothing compared to it now. But eventually, a project like Sui and Aptos use the same direction to come, and they will come to the same kind of conclusion that they will get to thousands of TPS per second. So Solana was very unique. It proved something that wasn't possible before. So yeah, it's I am very bullish on like people who are trying to use a Solana virtual machine SVM on other exchanges, or even fork Solana itself to make an L1 for a game, for example. So
yeah, how expensive do you think it would be? Let's say I want 100 validators and I want to fork Solana, right? And that's all the security I need. Like, how much in server costs or like hardware costs are we talking annually here?
Solana validator servers are expensive. Like,
yeah, tell me.
This is a server that has 2 terabytes of RAM. Like, how many gigabytes of RAM do you have on your computer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that many terabytes of RAM on my block.
It's like the kind of machine you need to train LLMs.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is, so is every monolithic chain going to have their own like layer 2 ecosystem? Like, is this the future for all monolithic chains? Because there's no way to build like application specific, build something on a monolithic chain where you're sharing block space, right? Like, there's always going to be a competition for that, and there's going to be fees, and it's going to ultimately hinder the UI UX of a game or of any other app. So is the future really going to be layer 2s for everyone?
I don't think Solana actually is interested or even care about L2s. And I think at least the stated plan now, they are not planning ever to have L2. And I think Anatoly on his our lecture to the Alliance cohort mentioned that yes, we can have in theory L2s and Solana, but they will not offer any improvement in performance over the L1, right? So what is the point?
What is the fundamental insight behind that statement?
It's about parallelization. So like Solana can already parallelize, right? But what L2s offer Ethereum is parallelization that it didn't have natively. That's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what layer 2s are supposed to do, is like parallel transactions across all the layer 2s.
Because they're not composable. So you can do all these different parallel things that aren't affecting each other, which Solana can already handle natively. It thinks about parallelization in its own way because it makes sure that you're not writing to state that some other transaction requires you not to write to.
That's why ETH2 roadmap, they moved away from sharding to just focusing on layer 2 development.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah.
I think there is possibility for Solana to support L2s, but it will not be to improve throughput. Maybe it will be for other reasons.
Yeah, like let me give you one. I think there's going to be an important thing for games with what we call battle roll-ups. So you and me, we want to create a state channel where we're going to send moves back and forth between each other, signing them. And then when one of us loses, well, the winner pushes the result to chain. And if it's been tampered with, the loser can be like, hey, no, that's not the correct state. Here's a proof from my opponent who signed this message earlier, right? Similar to like the Lightning Network, where the idea is that, okay, the entire changes to the state are trustless and secured cryptographically, but they're not recorded on chain. They can be recorded maybe on like a Validium, right? Some consortium of people can keep the state and we'll get rid of it. Right. So it's like an L2 for Solana looks like an L3 for Ethereum, right? Where it could be just about discarding excess data so we don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, I think we'll throw like so many terms over here that we need to unpack.
Sorry.
But I think we will touch on this in the state compression anyway, because exactly what Will said is that data is so big on Solana.
Yeah.
You are processing 4,000 transactions per second. So that's a lot of data, even if every transaction is a few bytes, right? And each transaction actually touches some memory location. It changes some state. And sometimes you don't need this state to be on the same L1 as Solana. You can want this data somewhere else. So you can have a game that people play for a couple hours and then all this data will disappear, ephemeral chain, and then it doesn't affect the consensus of Solana or the network of Solana. So
it's kind of like the consensus data of Solana itself. I hear Solana produces like 800 gigabytes of data a day, but it purges like 99.9% of it because it doesn't need to keep it. Like its consensus mechanism is data intensive, but you don't need to require all the data.
Yes, but like if you are running an archival node and you want to see your transaction history on Solana, yes, you will have to store all this beautiful data.
800 gigabytes a day? No way. No one can store that.
Okay, Dune just did that. Dune, if you are following Dune just enabled decoding of Solana programs. And Dune business is actually showing you archival data. Like, so yeah, someone is storing that.
Wait, can you explain what Dune is to our audience? Which Dune you're talking about? Because there's 100 Dune projects.
Okay, Dune Analytics is obviously the leading data analytic platform for EVM chains. And if you are not familiar with Dune, it's like they get the blockchain data, they decode it. Decode it means that when you see a transaction, they break down this transaction. This is an NFT transfer, this is a DEX transfer, this is an ETH transfer, and they store this in tables or databases. And they allow people to come and use this database by writing SQL queries. So you run a SQL query, and it will give you insights of the users of the network after Dune has decoded the instruction or decoded the transaction of the network. So because Dune started in Ethereum, when Ethereum started having competitors using the EVM architecture, it was very easy for Dune to just scale to other EVM chains. Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, many of them, right? But Solana kept being a massive hurdle because Solana is completely different architecture. The smart contracts in Solana, actually they are called the programs, so let's use the right term. Solana programs have a very different structure, so it's harder to decode. They worked for a bit with Solana Labs themselves to get the decoded data until they build their own decoding infrastructure. And they announced it this week, actually, that they did have a decoding infrastructure for Solana transactions. And now you can actually go onto Dune and see some of the new insights that you can get from the decoded Solana instruction. So yes, go all this to answer well. Yes, some people will have to store the archive. Well, it's not fun, but it has to be done.
I don't believe you. I'm going to read more about it. Talk to you later.
Okay, good.
Well, I don't believe your 800 gigabytes per day number. So talk to you later as well.
Yeah, great.
Don't trust verify. That's actually
which crypto Twitter does very less of, such as
we're different. We don't trust it. We verify, right?
Because just to be clear, I'm talking about 800 gigabytes, not of data regarding like past transactions. It's on the consensus. The consensus is really expensive data-wise to do. You have to send lots of data. It's what I'm told. And so it produces lots of data in terms of download and upload, but you don't have to store it for the security of the chain.
Okay. Like I can explain this as well if you want. Well,
please.
Solana has a very different consensus mechanism from any chain. Like, let's just take Ethereum, for example. The transaction that you see on Ethereum are just financial transactions, or even Bitcoin, right? The nodes come to consensus at the back end. No one sees the communication between nodes, right? The nodes at the network layer communicate with each other and decide, yes, this is a valid block, and that's done. All this happened hidden from the transaction history of the chain. Solana is different that everything happens on each chain, which means that nodes communicate with each other and votes for the next block happen on each chain. So there is, on Solana, you will find two buckets of transactions. There is something called voting transactions, and there is non-voting transactions.
Yeah.
Voting transactions.
That's why there used to be there used to be these stats where that said like 50% of Solana transactions are voting transactions rather than like real transactions. I mean,
yeah, actually, 50% to 80% sometimes is like voting transaction, because these are transactions. It's not transaction. It's just communication between validator nodes saying, yes, this block is correct or not.
But why? Why did Solana choose this in terms of showcasing this to the community?
Because their focus was actually to create the perfect execution mechanism that it can execute any kind of transaction. So why would you split communication or transactions in two separate buckets? Everything can fit in the same bucket. Consensus can also be a transaction. So essentially, that's the thesis. And that's why actually, yes, to your point, well, consensus on Solana consumes data because it's recorded as a transaction. But this data doesn't need to be kept, because once you are deep enough after a few blocks, you don't need any of this data. So,
but an archival node does.
Archival nodes will not keep the voting transactions after a couple of days.
Okay, so
that gets purged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go back to the fundamental question. We spent like 20 minutes and we didn't answer it, which is monolithic chain versus modular chain. Like, what's the future? Who's going to win? Because the more time I spend in Ethereum, all the layer 2s and the data availability layer, all these things, the more I feel frustrated and confused.
Yeah.
Like, these layer 2s, these rollups, they break composability, they create friction for the user in terms of bridging, and then the data availability creates issues around security because more transaction data will be stored in a different network versus the Ethereum layer 1. Bunch of trade-offs being made. Obviously, monolithic chains are not perfect either, because at some point, if Solana is successful, the chain will be congested.
Yep.
Like, I don't see a way around it. What's going on? What's the future?
I can take a first stab at this question. I think a successful chain has to start somewhere monolithic until they find product market fit, and then they can start like unbundling to scale, right? Ethereum started at a monolithic chain, and for the longest time, Ethereum was like focused on like it will be a monolithic chain. End of the story. Solana actually started unbundling, and this will come again back to the state compression discussion. Let me give a quick intro about state compression.
And then maybe talk about what they recently did behind the state compression as a test with the 1 billion NFTs.
Yeah, like state compression can be a big discussion, and I think it would be worth it to discuss it in detail. But just at a very high level, Solana used to have all the data in the active state. So every validator node has all the data, including, for example, the NFT metadata. If you have a Mad Lad, the picture, the GBG used to be on the account, on the active account state on Solana. And this is because they are adopting the monolithic vision of the blockchain. Everything has to be on a chain. But this turned out to be expensive, especially if you are going to mint so many NFTs. So they decided we don't need to store this data on a chain or like on the active state. We will store them somewhere else of a chain, and we will just put a reference or the root hash on the chain. So they already started taking some pieces away.
Doesn't Ethereum already do that?
Ethereum was already doing that because there is no way.
No way.
Yeah.
There is no way to store, like when you stored CryptoPunk on Ethereum, you had these pixelated images. They are pixelated for a reason because this is the maximum data you can put on a block.
Well, even originally, CryptoPunks wasn't on chain. It was like just a hash of the image, right? Pointing to like a service that was serving you that image so you could validate that it was the same hash. Like it was really ballsy to put every single pixel of CryptoPunks on chain eventually.
Data on a chain is expensive. And Solana used to do that, but now they say, no, we can actually save this money. We don't need to burn this money.
But they don't use IPFS to do it?
No.
Why not?
Most of the Metaplex, which is a company that put the NFT standard on Solana, have the metadata on a chain until now. Now they are off a chain with the new...
But the off-chain data is not an IPFS, or is it?
Nope. It's not an IPFS. It's actually stored also by the same validators or RBC nodes as kind of off-chain storage.
So now Solana's coming for Filecoin too.
That's the eigenlayer of Solana, because the same nodes they store the metadata of the NFTs.
Yes, but you don't have it risk-taking. So
eigenlayer without the risk-taking.
Yes. This does seem like a direct competitor to Filecoin then, if they're providing this data storage layer on the...
I wouldn't say it's a competitor to Filecoin because they are just for like the data that you want to store in Solana and you want to have the metadata somewhere. It's I would consider it a decentralized network for Solana, the storage network for Solana. So
how is the security guaranteed for those metadata?
Because you store the hash, like you store this data in a Miracle tree, and then you have a hash or the root hash for the tree on Solana. So not like if the metadata changes, this hash will be wrong. So you cannot actually cheat. You cannot have.
But is this like a Validium? Like we're just...
If you lose the data, you lose the data.
Yes. If you lose the data, yes, you. But if someone has a copy for the data, fine. Yeah. But like that's actually the main advantage of state compression is that you trust someone to store the data for you. You to provide data availability, right? And because they ask now the validators or the RPC nodes to do that, like Soliscan and stuff like that, these are people who are aligned with the Solana ecosystem. So they will
do data sampling? Are they like sampling to make sure they're holding it, or just hoping they're holding the data?
I don't think they have data sampling right now. I may be wrong, so I will need to dive deeper to get the answer to that. But I don't think they have
knowledge proof or something. Maybe is there knowledge proof somewhere?
That's what Filecoin does, right? Filecoin seals the data and does ZK proofs that the data is still there. Here it sounds like a Validium where you're just trusting that the people are holding their data on behalf of you.
Yeah.
You're trusting that the people are aligned with Solana and they don't need extra incentive, basically.
Pretty good trust, I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah. So that's again back to the same root question that Qiao asked here. Like, what is the vision? Is monolithic a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing initially, but after a certain threshold, you will have to unbundle. And Ethereum is going through this unbundling phase now, with like, let's put the transactions on the L2s. Okay, you put the transactions through L2s. Great. You have more transactions on L2s now than the L1.
So are you saying Anatoly is wrong? Or are you disagreeing with Anatoly?
Anatoly is right in stating that they will not need L2s now because they cannot, they don't need it. But Anatoly is an engineer, right? And engineers find solutions. If Solana grew up so much that the current monolithic structure is not working for them, and he can find a solution where an L2 will help Solana team is very pragmatic. They are engineers. They will do whatever it takes to scale the network. So he is not wrong. He doesn't need it right now.
You know, it says something really interesting that Solana is engineers. I think that's spot on because the DNA of Solana is engineering and the DNA of Ethereum is research. Yep. At least from my 10 years of observing the two. But layer 2s on Solana will happen permissionlessly if needed because Anatoly cannot stop the layer 2 projects because it's a smart contract on the layer 1.
They're already happening, right?
We can debate on that. I think they can happen permissionlessly because if you want to, for example, proof zero knowledge proof on Solana, no one can stop you from writing a code that does this.
Yeah.
In Ethereum, you needed actually the EVM to have a precompile to make that cost cheap. But in Solana, I think it will be easy. So.
Okay. So your conclusion, just to summarize, is that all chains will start monolithic and at some point they will be forced to unbundle and go into a layered approach or a modular approach.
Have you? Yeah, I can see you're agreeing. But have you read the Vitalik's blog post called Endgame, Mohammed?
Yes.
Where he talks about how once you push all these chains, they end up looking very similar, right? Like you stretch their technology and they're forced to scale in all these ways. And once you've tried everything, they look very similar, but Solana will look ugly, is what he says, and Ethereum will look not ugly. Do you believe it?
If we're having this discussion 10 years, 20 years from now, and we're still speaking about Ethereum versus Solana, we have no clue. We failed. Okay, so if Ethereum is to become the internet computer or Solana to become internet computer, this should be happening in the back end where users have no clue which network is serving them. As the same way that when you look into a website, you don't ask, is this website on AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, right? It just works, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like we're all trending the same direction. Like if you look at Cosmos and the Ethereum rollup ecosystem, it's very similar. But if we went back 2 to 3 years ago, who would have expected that outcome? I mean, Ethereum had a completely different roadmap in place compared to Cosmos. And now the end state is that they're relying on builders outside of the ecosystem to build out all of these different functionalities or modularity around the Ethereum ecosystem to help it scale.
3 years ago, I remember so clearly, I went to that event, a youth conference. I can't remember which one it was. It might be Prague or Berlin. And Vitalik was there.
I think you told me it was Berlin. Yeah.
Berlin. And Vitalik gave a presentation, Vitalik always gives the keynote. And he said specifically that Ethereum scaling roadmap needs to start with the layer 1. If layer 1 succeeds, then they can do layer 2s. But 3 years later, that's not happening. The opposite is happening. The rollups are happening, and the layer 1 scaling is not by layer 1 scaling, I mean specifically sharding.
Yeah,
it's not happening.
Yeah, because everyone was talking about sharding at that point, but the biggest problem back then was composability. I think was one big problem.
Yeah, sharding is always the problem. Is sharding is essentially the vision of Cosmos that you have chains. Each chain have some compute, and then you communicate between them.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing about they will look the same, but they will not be the same. So let me clarify.
Yes.
And this is, I think, the point that Vitalik was trying to make in this endgame, right? If you start with a thesis around decentralization and you are breaking down the pieces for everyone to be able to contribute to the network, that can get you the same end goal, but the network will be still decentralized. If you start like Solana by the monolithic vision, and you depend on 100 validators or more, or 200 or 500, it doesn't matter. But each validator has to be running this massive server, then the number of participants in the network can be different, right? So, or the operator of the network will be different. And this can lead back us to the same point where we started from, where AWS runs everything essentially.
Do you think long-term for Solana to scale, it has to become more censorable?
I think so, yeah. Maybe some efforts like client diversification can help. But still, one of the major issues with Solana is that you need a really massive, really strong machine to be a validator. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they're explicitly making this trade-off where they're sacrificing a little bit of the decentralization for more powerful performance.
How much would it cost you to blow up Solana right now? Like, how many servers do you need to permissionlessly contribute to shut down the network? And what would it cost?
It has nothing to do with the cost of the machines. It's a proof of stake. So how much stake do you need?
So you just need stake. It doesn't matter if you, right. So you can't corrupt it by adding more machines. Makes sense.
Can we talk a little bit about the evidence that we have that Solana is actually making a comeback? Because everyone is like, Solana is dead.
Best evidence I've seen is number of applications going up from Solana. So we saw in our 8th cohort, Solana in 3rd place. In our 9th cohort, right around when FTX exploded, Solana dropped to 4th place in terms of number of teams coming in.
Who took the 3rd place? Was it Arbitrum?
Oh, wait, sorry. So yeah, Arbitrum beat out Solana for a brief moment. And now it's back to where it was before with Solana in 3rd place. And it's obvious, but maybe for users at home, I mean, listeners, it goes Ethereum, Polygon, Solana now, Arbitrum.
For me,
Optimism, Avalanche.
For me, it's if you just look at the NFT trading volume, that's a great sign of like user activity. And it turns out, I think this past week, Solana hit all-time high in transactions compared to Ethereum and all the other layer 2s. And a lot of that is due to the NFT trading volumes that are happening on both Magic Eden and Tensor, which we could talk a bit about the competitive landscape there. I also think the Helium move to Solana is a contributing factor, along with Hive Mapper and the decentralized or proof of physical network, or DPIN as an example, industry moving over to Solana. I think those are 2 contributing factors, I think.
The proof of physical work phenomenon is, for me, the most interesting one.
Yep.
Because it's the one vertical in crypto that actually attracts the mainstream users. All the other ones are, relatively speaking, more crypto native. Like, NFT trading. Like right now, people are just trading NFTs as shitcoins, and then DeFi is definitely crypto native. All these verticals are crypto native, but proof of physical work is the one where if you ever use the Helium the mobile app or whatever, it feels like Web2 application, and the crypto stuff is for the most part abstracted away. And the founder of Helium also talked about using ads to acquire users. Like that's how they perceive their users, is that they're not crypto natives, they're the mainstream, the normies. And so that's why this whole thing where the proof of physical work projects are moving to Solana is such a big deal for Solana, because Solana is being perceived by builders as being the chain for attracting the mainstream users.
So could we say that, Solana could become the consumer chain?
Yes.
Yeah, same.
That's the trend we're seeing. And Ethereum is the crypto native chain.
That's an interesting narrative. That's a very interesting narrative, right? One's more like crypto native, and like you have DeFi and all the other good stuff that's happening there. That's more like attracting the pro crypto users. And then you have Solana that's more for mainstream adoption.
A good example in gaming is, so out of Ethereum, you have 0x Park, which is a research skunkworks, and they've got a project called Mud, which is basically like a game engine for building fully on-chain games, and it has an architecture for how to make these. Yep. And recently Jump released their equivalent piece of software called Arc and open sourced it. So while maybe the new insights and the research comes out of Ethereum, the engineers at Solana are ready to pick up what works and just deploy it. And it actually works better on Solana in some regards, because you don't have limitations for like smart contract size, which is a big problem that Ethereum games have that Solana doesn't.
Wait, what's ARC?
It stands for AR component.
ARC.
I have to remember.
Don't worry about
it. Basically, so normally in object-oriented programming, you have this sort of structure for how you would build logic. And it doesn't work well for games because of the way components want to inherit behaviors. And so they use an entity component system instead of object-oriented programming framework. Now, I'm not a computer scientist. This is me like rehashing my understanding. But essentially, games get too clumsy when you do pure object-oriented programming and you add this ECS to fix that, and that lets them scale really well. And Ethereum didn't have like a cohesive framework for doing that on chain. And so Mud built that along with some network code and some other nice things and packaged that for developers to be like a game engine. Arc is the attempt to create that similar style framework so that game designers can build fully on-chain games in a way that's more composable and more scalable. And
so Arc is the Solana version of Mud.
Yeah, exactly. So Shanav and Dev, I don't remember his last name, are building it out of Jump, and they're even doing like an on-chain games game jam soon in Singapore, where people are going to use it, similar to what Mud did with its Autonomous World Symposium.
Very interesting. So it seems like a lot of things that are working on Ethereum are slowly moving over to Solana as well.
And what's cool is, it was a very crypto native thing to think of and do and build Mud. And they built it in Optimism, which is like the crypto native rollup, right? Also, but just because it's crypto native doesn't mean that like you can't bring it over afterwards.
So maybe talking about broadening this up to other layer ones, like it seems like Solana and Ethereum have very robust ecosystems. Could we say that's true for Cosmos and let's say Sui and Aptos? Do they have a shot? Like, where do you see this all pan out?
In our data, we're not seeing it, except for Avalanche, which is keeping a bit of a toehold.
Interesting.
I think Sui also is putting a lot of effort, at least in like recruiting community who are seeing projects that have started building on Ethereum and Solana and like being approached by the Sui team to like build on there as well. So I think they are very focused on community, and this will position them to have a shot in the market. Move as a smart contract language is still a bottleneck because not every developer is used to it. So it will take some adoption curve, and we'll see if they can actually get developers to use Move. Then they have a really strong shot.
But I've heard through our some of the founders are building within the Sui ecosystem that they prefer Move once they learned how to use Move. They find it to be much more robust.
Prefer Move to what?
To Solidity and Rust?
Yes, but this is again the biggest bit Solana talk. Solana didn't use a specific language; they used Rust.
Yeah.
So they opened themselves to a massive developer community coming from Web2. Yes, it's a subset of Rust. You cannot use every instruction of Rust.
Not everything,
But again, engineers will find, I know Rust, so I can go build. Instead of I have to learn Move, I have to learn Solidity.
Yeah.
So,
but I feel like with GPT-4, like the ability to like get these DSLs down, these domain-specific languages, is just going to go away very fast.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
I was telling the Noir team that, like, with regards to Aztec, and we can talk about that another time. What about the zombie chains, Qiao? You were talking earlier that you know a zombie chain when you see one.
Why don't I talk about the ones that I think are not zombie chain that still have a fighting chance?
Okay.
I think Cosmos has a fighting chance, but Cosmos is facing a huge amount of threat from the rollups as a service from Ethereum, because we know for a fact that many of the top DeFi protocols, they're going to pick rollups as a service instead of Cosmos. The only counterexample is DYDX, which originally built on top of not Starknet, but their white glove service. I forgot the name. Start something.
StarkX.
StarkX. That's right. Yeah. And they moved to Cosmos, but everyone else is picking RAS or rollup as a service. So Cosmos is going to face a lot of competition, but I think they still have a fighting chance because they still have some of the best builders, the most missionary builders that have been in the space for a long time.
You have Osmosis with still $1 billion in TVL. I mean, TVL is like a whatever metric, but I mean, it's pretty deep in liquidity. And so I feel like it could attract some pretty strong founders to build within that ecosystem.
And I was talking to the Evmos team, and the EVM Cosmos structure is getting really good and robust. They're getting there. So like it just feels like pointing to a new RPC provider on MetaMask and you have the same experience and all your tools pretty much work. So
nice.
It gets to inherit that. Yeah.
Sui, Aptos, and Filecoin, they have a fighting chance, but their window of opportunity won't be too long. If they aren't able to bootstrap a critical mass of builders by the next bull market, they're going to be dead. But they have a fighting chance now. The risk with Dune and Aptos, which is something I've noticed very anecdotally, is that their biggest challenge is to find the missionary builders, not the mercenaries that left Solana for Aptos in November, December last year. If they can get the missionary builders, they have a fighting chance.
The problem is that everyone is fighting for to attract the same missionary builders, right? I mean, Ethereum, I mean, you have the ETH Global events. I mean, that's primarily geared towards missionary founders, right? Same thing with Solana with their hackathons and, their community. And so I guess, we have to bet on the fact that there should be an inflow of more developers that are coming in to grow the pie in order for everyone to grow the pie.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just going to be just very hard for them to compete for the same developers.
And same thing with Filecoin. They have a fighting chance because they recently launched the smart contract capability. That's going to be a huge deal. I mean, imagine Bitcoin with Turing complete smart contract capability. Like how big of a deal that would be. And Filecoin fundamentally makes, in my opinion, meaningful trade-offs with anything that exists today, which is that they can store a shit ton of data, and the sacrifice that they make is much longer block time. Now, the latter is not ideal for a lot of users, but this trade-off that they're making can possibly enable new use cases, and we'll see what's going to come out of it.
What kind of use cases?
Well, we discussed this, right?
Yeah.
NFTs seems like the one that's the most obvious because they require a lot of storage. The metadata requires a lot of storage.
AI is a good use case also for Filecoin because you have massive data which represents the model weights. So like the small LLMs model, the small ones are 7 terabytes. So it's big models, yeah.
So Cosmos, Aptos, Sui, Filecoin have a fighting chance. I want to go back to Solana because Solana is the main topic of this. So we talked about those catalysts, right? Like proof of physical work, gaming, and so on and so forth. Is there anything else we haven't touched on? Like we haven't touched on DeFi. We haven't touched on the Solana Phone.
Yeah,
I think the Solana Phone is an interesting wedge, given Anatoly's background in Qualcomm, so where he literally designed mobile chipsets, and so he had some experience in launching or productizing phones. And the basic concept for the saga is being able to have more control of the app store, being able to store your private keys within a secure enclave within the phone. So it enables interesting use cases that isn't enabled today with like an Apple iPhone and a Google Android phone.
100%. That's the reason I would switch to Solana from Ethereum. Like the Ethereum experience on mobile is the most painful thing in the world. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm crying.
Well, I mean, if you look at like the North Star, I mean, MetaMask has 40 million monthly active users now, right? I mean, that's peanuts compared to what we have on the Web2 space. And I think that's primarily driven by the complexities of private key management.
For me, the biggest hurdle is private key. I will never use my mobile for anything serious in crypto because I don't trust the security.
Yeah.
But if you can turn a phone into a hardware wallet, which to me is the case of Solana Phone, then I will be more inclined to use it.
And it also enables, like, I think another big hurdle, I think, in the crypto space is like, let's say NFT sales. Right now, Apple, as an example, Apple App Store, they want certain types of fees on top of whatever sales that you do within crypto apps. I feel like that's a hindrance, right? So paying fees on top of fees on top of fees. Another good example is like Elon Musk with the Twitter verification. You have to pay $7 if you natively log on a website, but then you pay $11 if you want to do it through your phone. So there are additional fees for using Apple and Google Android as a distribution mechanism. So you could abstract that away through, Solana's App Store because you don't have to pay those fees. As an example, I think it's 0% they charge.
I can't even buy an Amazon book on my Apple iPhone because there are too many fees. Like on my Kindle, like this is disgusting. I hate these walled gardens. Can we have crypto take over the world yet, please?
Wait, when you buy a book on your iPhone, they charge more?
I'm not even allowed to buy the book on my iPhone. Like I have to buy it on my desktop and port it to my phone to read it because they won't let me buy a book on my phone, a digital book.
Kindle app.
Yeah, Kindle app.
Does he have Amazon actually shopping Apple? I'm not an Apple user, so like I will ask them questions here. Like,
so when I'm on a shopping cart, like for Amazon, no problem. Like I can buy things. But if I want to be on my Kindle app on my phone, I want to buy that book, because I used to be a Google user. Like this was just normal behavior. Yeah, I want to buy the phone, but like Apple won't let me do that.
Interesting.
And it's what's killing so many crypto companies that are trying to launch apps on the iPhone. Like they just don't have the 30% cut at $100 maximum.
The number of conversations I've had with our founders on the App Store deplatforming them, or not letting them upgrade their app, I lost count of them.
Well, here's another interesting thing, right? Like if you look at, there's two categories of metaverses, right? There's a crypto metaverse and what I call the Web 2 metaverse. Web 2 metaverse is Roblox and Fortnite. And the reason why they have hundreds of millions of users is because they're mobile native. And what I think what's holding crypto metaverses from taking off is that it's not mobile native. And once it does become mobile native, I do think that we'll see the similar, like, and then obviously there's other things at play, right? Games and other developments, but making, one problem I think that's stopping us from getting this like mass adoption in the metaverse space is primarily because of lack of mobile support and private key management and all of the other things.
Interesting insight, yeah.
Cool. Well, it seems like that's like a high level of where we think Solana is going to go, and some of the upcoming catalysts. Any final words you guys want to add before we close up?
Did you guys see anything in DeFi on Solana? Because TVL hasn't barely changed.
So I think the only thing that I see on DeFi, which is like actually a good sign of coming back, is that Serum, which was actually heavily developed by FTX. And after FTX died, everyone assumed that Serum is dead. And Serum is actually a critical piece of infrastructure in Solana because it allows order book exchanges. So what happened is the community actually came back and build forked that, and I think they are building something called Open Book.
Yeah.
And Open Book is like the new version of Serum that doesn't depend on FTX. It comes back to your point, Qiao, about missionary, like people who are aligned with Solana so much that no, we are not going anywhere. If a piece of infrastructure failed, we just go and rebuild it. So this is kind of like a qualitative data point.
The thing that Solana has that Sui and Aptos and potentially Filecoin don't have. This is something I said in 2016, like 7 years ago, that they made their early adopters very rich. Because when Solana first got listed, it was like less than $1 at 50 cents. And then it did 100x, 400x from that point to the top. And now obviously it's down 90% again. But if you got in at the listing, at the whatever like original listing, you're still very wealthy, and you were very wealthy at some point. So that emotional attachment is something that Solana people have, that Ethereum people have, that Bitcoin people have, but it's not something that Sui and Aptos or even Filecoin have. Because when Sui and Aptos got listed, they were trading at $10 billion FDV. Filecoin, the price chart of Filecoin is straight line down.
Who got rich in Sui and Aptos? VCs?
Yes.
Okay, VCs don't build exchange.
That's not true.
Well, I mean, I think for Aptos, they listed their token. I think it went down like 5x, and then I think people bought it up. And so some people made money there and some airdrops. So we didn't do any airdrops.
It's not a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
The airdrops are not effective. They're just not. Like airdrops, people who receive the airdrops dump them immediately.
It's a waste.
It's a waste.
Did you see the data point? I think it was, I forgot who published it, but 95% of Uniswap airdrop receivers ended up dumping their token.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing that Solana has that most of its competitors don't have. They launched at a really good point, which was the deep bear market of last cycle. Actually, right before the outside of the bull market.
Do you think actually Sui or Aptos will actually go up like by 10x, 100x?
100x is very hard because 100x puts you at a $1 trillion market cap, but 10x, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as Ethereum grows, I mean, I think the rest of the pies will grow along with the layer 2s. Yeah. Some ancillary points. There's two things I want to mention. One is Solana. You mentioned Open Book. Yeah, so the community came together and they spun up Open Book. Was it Open Book?
Open Book, yeah.
Yeah, and they roughly have about $4 million in TVL, so not life changing in terms of what they're building. But another team came out and they're building pretty much the serum for Solana, which is they're called Phoenix.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of support around that ecosystem right now, from what I'm seeing.
Okay.
But the data I've seen doesn't suggest that DeFi is coming back.
DeFi is not coming back yet on Solana. I have not seen that happen yet. What we're seeing is the counter, which is like proof of physical work, NFTs are, very strong in the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah.
And maybe like
utility coin chain.
But then if you think about it, like you have DeFi on every layer 1 and layer 2. So like how much DeFi do you need? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
no, but you need DeFi. DeFi is core infrastructure.
It is. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm trying to get a better understanding of is if you could do majority of the DeFi on, let's say, Ethereum and layer 2s, what are the bootstrap mechanisms needed for DeFi to take off in other industries? So like in Solana, as an example, I could see that proof of physical work could bootstrap and grow the DeFi ecosystem, right? Because people want to sell their tokens, right? Or they want to borrow against their tokens. I could see that. So I feel like a part of DeFi growing up in these layer 1s, layer 2s is partially driven by other ancillary products that are building alongside DeFi so that you could bootstrap both sectors accordingly. And so like you can't just do copy pasta is what I'm saying. Like you can't just go on Avalanche and just build a bunch of layer like DeFi protocols because no one's going to use it, right? Unless you have other products that are building that are going to sustain the growth of DeFi in those ecosystems is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think to your point, Imran, like we saw this with Stepin when Stepin launched it, and like they had a lot of activity on Solana, and they started using Orca as a DEX.
Yeah.
Orca became all of a sudden the first, the highest TVL until actually Stepin itself built their own DEX and all the volume went through. So like DeFi cannot exist in isolation unless it started in Ethereum in isolation, but in other ecosystem, you need to have a wedge. And the wedge for Solana was, as we discussed, is the consumer activity, whether it's games, whether it's proof of physical work. And I think this is what may get DeFi back to Solana in the long term.
Yeah, so I'd say DeFi definitely on Solana. And I think the proof of physical works will help launch that to the next level, I think, is what I suspect.
Yeah. So, like, what do you think how Solana will behave in the next 12 months? We can leave this to Qiao because Qiao is a trader in the team.
Next 12 months, everyone is dead. Stay alive for 12 months and then we'll see.
Okay.
And then good times. Good times.
Good game.
Well, this was a good chat. Hopefully you guys learned, about the Solana ecosystem and some of the upcoming catalyst. I think we're all in alignment that we're pretty bullish on where Solana is going to be going. And there'll be more to come within Solana. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for listening to Good Game. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.